Hey guys, so our friend Cloud Strife provided a comment or contributed a comment that I thought was interesting. He was asking, since we know that there's such a thing as the SE grip for INFJs and the NITI loop for INFJs, which are the most commonly discussed function-related mental issues, now that we have a more enriched understanding of different subtypes of INFJ, existential subtypes you might call them, along the, across three categories: adaptive, submissive, solipsistic, and spiritualized. Are there particular mental issues of the kind that I've just discussed that are more specific to the adaptive submissive INFJ or the solipsistic or the spiritualized INFJ? That's an interesting question, and actually led me to reflect that I want to slightly update what's currently accepted. The adaptive submissive INFJ is an INFJ that's essentially lost in the midst of other people. They're losing their sense of individuality, of subjectivity. They're embracing the positions of others to protect themselves, essentially. It's a defense mechanism, although you could argue that it's a neurotic defense mechanism that does not serve them in the long term. Now, what's going to define them is not the SE grip. And the reason why it's not the SE grip as such, but rather what I would like to call a form of SE-FE looping. First of all, is that INFJs who are of this type are very much plugging into their connection with others via FE, which is the primordial mode of experiencing the world for any INFJs, but these INFJs are very, very dependent on this form of FE engagement, which is often distorted and sort of pulls them away from their NI subjectivity. Now, this is going to mean an engagement, a looping of SE and FE. There's every reason in the world to assume that both extroversion and introversion have functions that constitute a loop, and that the loop is not a privilege of NITI, but also of SE-FE and FE-SE. So this is what I would say. You see, the thing about the SE grip is, I'm not saying that this is not a thing, but the SE grip means that essentially you're invaded by the unconscious, because the SE function for an INFJ is never completely conscious. So if you're in the SE grip, you're in the grip of something that's either partly or mostly or nearly completely unconscious, depending on the kind of INFJ you are. And that means, I'm sorry to say, but that sounds like a psychotic episode. Jung defines it as that, and Freud defines it in ways very similar to that. So if you're in the grip of your unconscious, your interaction with external reality is not going to be normal. People are going to notice that straight away, okay? So it's not adaptive submissive. The adaptive submissive is very concerned about externality and extremely aware of what externality is like. You might even say a little too aware, right? But better be too aware in the sense that that's so unaware that you lose a sense of external reality. Now, in the case of the solipsist, well, of course, the NITI looping is going to be the main risk factor here, because these types tend to withdraw from external reality and social reality, their main access to external reality. Of course, there's different degrees of being solipsistic, just that there are different degrees of being adaptive submissive. Most people are a mix, right? A mix of adaptive submissive and solipsistic, or a mix of solipsistic and spiritualized. It may happen that they're a mix of the three. You very encounter people who are so rigid that they are just one type. And people who are very, very rigid, well, they're more likely to be neurotically rigid. And in the case of the solipsists, again, that's not the most solipsistic INFJs by any stretch of the imagination, but they exist. These are much more likely to have an ITI looping. And what you'll notice as well is that the TI is very much a servant of NI in this case. It is there, but it is usually just asked to ratify the conclusions of NI. It is not parsing the conclusions of NI in such a way that a judgment that the NI vision is wrong is possible. And this has all to do with the fact that in solipsism, the NI world is the womb, in a sense, is the self-contained, reassuring container. Okay? Kind of repeated myself there. Apologies for that. But so, to the extent that there are extremely solipsistic INFJs who pretty much never engage with external reality, the pattern of disengagement from external reality, disinterest in external reality, and perhaps a certain form of losing a sense of what external reality is like, suggests to me that this is the only subtype of INFJ that's at risk of the SE grip, because the SE grip, being probably like structurally akin to a psychotic episode, has this fundamental characteristic of disconnection and losing a sense of what external reality is actually like, right? So SE grip almost implies hallucinations, it implies derealization, depersonalization, and all these traits that you're much more likely to encounter in psychosis. Again, probably very, very rare, but to the extent it can happen, going to happen to solipsistic INFJs. And as you might have guessed, well, the spiritualized INFJ, in a sense, is it has a normal, very non-pathological, very healthy mental life. Of course, they experience shock, grief, loss, distress, because that's life. You know, life throws things at us that we can't control, and what matters is how we can bounce back, how we can just take that, our level of resilience. And being a non-neurotic subtype of the INFJ personality, the spiritualized INFJ has transcended previous modes and has attained a stage where the level of psychological resilience is really quite high. So you're not going to experience a lot of long and lingering mental troubles. Okay, so I hope this was interesting and that answers CL Strive's question. Thank you again. If you want to hear more about these various topics and the subtypes, don't forget my book, The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, how INFJs interact with external reality, how they can find happiness, purpose, and value in this world as often hostile to us. You can find it at the first link below, okay? And if you have loved it but haven't reviewed it yet, be aware that a review really helps me with referencing the book on Amazon, so please consider reviewing it. Its prequel, you know, perhaps, maybe, most likely, is The Ecstatic Soul, which looks more at the INFJ mind, the inside of the mind of the INFJ and INFJ consciousness, its existential manifestations. It's called A New Look at the INFJ Personality. The books go really well together, so you can get both books if you haven't. They are prequel and sequel. And as usual, don't forget that the lifeblood of my channel is my Patreon page. For a small donation every month from $3.50, you can access some bonus content, you can interact with me, and you can suggest topics for videos, and I often follow up. You know, I often follow through. So consider it. It really helps me with keeping the channel going. I'd appreciate a gesture. In the meantime, see you in the next video, guys. Bye-bye.